I'd like to call this meeting to order. Mrs. Walker, would you lead us in the flag salute? Sunshine Law Statement. All requirements of the Open Public Meetings Act have been met for this meeting of the Board of Education of the Borough of Oradell. Notice of this meeting was filed with the Record and Town News and all persons requesting such notice. Mr. Darien, would you read the mission statement?
The Oradell Public School District is dedicated to the ongoing pursuit of educational excellence through comprehensive, innovative curriculum and instruction. The district is committed to providing opportunities for social, emotional, and academic discovery to foster curiosity, courage, and character. Our goal is to prepare our students to become lifelong learners who are self-directed, resilient, productive, responsible citizens.
Thank you. Roll call.
On the roll, Mrs. Acosta will not be here. Mr. Del Greco?
Here.
Mrs. Downey? Here. Mrs. Norian?
Here.
Mr. Nutlin?
Here.
Mrs. Walker?
Here.
Mr. Walsh?
Here.
Mr. Darien?
Here.
Mrs. Nichols?
Here. Open to the public for agenda items only. Not seeing any, we'll move forward. We're going to move right into the superintendent's report.
To begin my report this evening, I'm going to ask Mrs. Hawley to present the 23-24 HIB self-assessment presentation.
Good evening. I passed out a copy of my slides, so they should be at your seat, and it is behind you up on the screen. So every year we are required by the state to do a harassment, intimidation, and bullying self-assessment. And this is part of the Anti-Bullying Bill of Rights Act. It is a self-assessment, so we use our own data and our own information to go through a rubric that's based on 8 core elements and 26 indicators. And the time frame that we use is from July 2023 to June 2024. So it's the full school year. After tonight's presentation, Ms. Bozius will certify the self-assessment and then it will be submitted to the state, and a copy of this presentation will be posted online for the community. There is no minimum score provided by the state that states we are passing or failing, but a baseline score is a total of 52 points, and a perfect score is a total of 78 points. It's important to note that this score is not based on the amount of harassment, intimidation, and bullying investigations we do, but how we train our community and how we investigate any HIB cases that are brought to us. So the 8 core elements that we self-assess on are our programs and initiatives that are centered around HIB, training on our Board of Ed approved policy, other staff instruction and training programs that can help support HIB. So some of those involve what Mrs. Mason, our school counselor, puts into place with some of her activities, like the well-known and well-loved turkeygrams, and then also some of the activities that we do in class based around our community building. Curriculum and instruction pieces that we put together on HIB, our personnel, school level incident reporting procedure, and you probably remember that we use Hibster, an online program that helps us stay close to our deadlines and gives us a database to store all of our information, our investigation procedure, and our reporting. So here are our self-assessment results. So you'll find the 2023-2024 results on that right side column, and I have given you the results from the previous 3 years. So you'll notice that our total was a 72 out of 78, which is 1 point up from previous school years. Everything else we maintained at the same level from the 22-23 school year. And where we grew was in the, there it is, number 5, HIB personnel, and I'll explain that a little more deeply on this slide. So when we look at the area in which we show growth, it was in that core element number 5, which is our HIB personnel. So last year, the school safety and climate team met 3 times to actively address and improve various school climate concerns. So because we met those 3 times and we involved parents and students, and we used information from those meetings to help us build our climate and culture, that's that area that we were able to gain that additional point on. We continue to show strong scores in our areas of curriculum instruction, incident reporting, and investigation. And the school safety and climate team enhanced its meeting protocols, and that allowed us to better identify key areas for our school improvement. And because of the work that the parents, teachers, admin, and students did on the school safety and climate team, we recognized hallway behavior as a priority and something that we needed to work on. We then brought that to the admin team and talked about ways to brainstorm it, and that ultimately inspired this year's theme, The Way of the Panther. One of the highlights that I always like to share with the board is that we continue, this was our 2nd year of conducting HIB parent PTA volunteer training sessions. So anyone who comes in to volunteer for the PTA more than 1 time must come to a volunteer training session, so they have information about what HIB is and when they should go to admin if they are in the building and have a concern that they feel may be related to HIB. As we move forward, what we're focusing on this year is to use our theme of the Way of the Panther to create school-wide conditions that prevent and address HIB. So our first focus was really to work on how we interact in the hallways. So not just moving through the hallways quietly and safely when we're in a line, but when we pass anyone in the hallways, whether we're a student, a teacher, adult, we acknowledge the other person in the hallway. We say hello, we give a nod, we give a smile, we ask them how they're doing. This is new for our students. Our students are very good at talking to the adults in the hallway, but something that we're encouraging is for them to talk to one another. So it could be a 6th grader with a 3rd grader who pass each other in the hallway. It could be a 1st grader to a kindergartner. We're teaching them to say hi to everyone because that is a way we build community. And it may seem a very simple way to work on bullying prevention, but it really is helping establish our culture. We're also working on moving safely from area to area without running and without being noisy, because that's a way that we show respect. And the more ways that we can build in respect, the stronger our community is. We've started establishing consistent school-wide OPS circle routines and expectations. So when our students come together for a community meeting, there are expectations that we have now outlined based on the information from our school safety and climate team meetings last year and our work that we did with our SEL review team to work together on what is expected in every single community meeting at OPS. How do we treat each other? How do we stay in our same space? How we look at each other and give eye contact to the speaker. We've allocated dedicated specific time for classroom meetings that all teachers are expected to do. And we have offered teachers support in how to connect the ideas that are done within our community meeting time to outside of that community meeting. You could sit down in any of our circle meetings, and our students will be able to tell you what to do when they're in a conflict, or who to go to when they need help. But as soon as it becomes outside on the playground or in the lunchroom, or there's a conflict when they're working together on group work, it's a little bit more challenging for them. So at some of our faculty meetings this year, our professional development and our grade level meetings, where I'm meeting with the teachers once a month, we are talking about ways to connect that, ways to sometimes stop what we're doing as a class and say, wait a minute, we've talked about this when we're in our community meetings, how can we apply that here? And ways with how we work with our students in lunch and recess, with our reflection, our recess reflection that we are doing, and even within our detention system that we've set up within 6th grade. What are ways that we can take steps to continue to be respectful and deepen the respect? We're going to continue our volunteer HIB training. We have trainings already scheduled for October and February. And next year, we're going to bring in a licensed healthcare professional to conduct suicide awareness training. This is part of our 5-year training cycle. So next year is the 6th year. So every 5 years, we bring in a licensed healthcare professional to do the training that helps to go a little bit deeper than the vector trainings that staff does each year on suicide prevention. Something else that I'd like to mention is that when we do go through our HIB process, we have trained the new assistant principals and Ms. Cummings, who is our director of curriculum and instruction, to be anti-bullying specialists in the building. So we have added that 3rd anti-bullying specialist, which will help us at times when we know that there are higher instances of having HIB investigations. So it won't put as much of a strain on whomever has to do the investigation. We are also going to work with the district attorney to do some additional training as we go through our first few HIB cases to make sure that we're doing exactly what is needed, and we're identifying all of the areas to help us strengthen making sure that when something is brought forward, we're doing our investigation to the best of our ability and staying within the protocol set forth by the law. Do you have any questions?
Any questions from the board? Mrs. Walker?
This person who's the anti-bullying specialist, she's going to be trained for this. Who trains her?
The anti-bullying specialists, the 3 anti-bullying specialists are Mrs. Brancato, Mr. Werner, and Miss Cummings. They are trained by NJPSA and FEA, which are, NJPSA is the New Jersey Supervisory and Principals Association, and they bring in lawyers that we then pay for those lawyers to train us. So they're the state trainers for HIB anti-bullying specialists.
So once they're trained, then that's good, or do they get trained every year?
So there is training every year that we all attend. There are, so the APs have already been trained, and they've actually already gone to an updated training. So they did their training at the end of the summer, the beginning of September, and last Friday, they went to, they call it sometimes like trends in school law. There's additional anti-bullying training and HIB training that is done within those, and then I go to additional training each year. And as I said, we'll be working with Mr. Merlino, the school attorney, to deepen our training as well.
Good, thank you.
Mr. Del Greco?
On the training on BOE-approved BOE policy, we had an 8 out of 9 on the self-assessment. Is it from a lack of policy? Are we missing policy, or is it lack of training?
No.
Is it a vendor, the vendor point?
No, the vendor point is the suicide prevention. That is number 3 in other staff instruction and training programs. The training on the Board of Ed approved policy is there's 3 levels. So when you fill it out, there's kind of below, it's almost like the NJSLA. So it's like below level, like you're not quite doing enough, you're meeting, and you're exceeding. So that additional point is an exceeding point, and I thought I brought my paperwork with me, and I didn't. When Ms. Bozius does her report, I can run and get it, and then I can come back and address exactly what it is.
Thank you.
Sorry about that.
No worries.
Any other questions for Ms. Hawley? Mrs. Walker?
Just one quick comment that I think it's great the way you guys, it's a self-assessment, and that you're very honest. You're not giving yourself all these, to meet the needs and come up with a 78. So I think that and you're learning over the years, I've noticed that where to improve, and you're doing that study. And that's a great example for the kids in the school also. That bit of honesty and forthrightness that
So
we
it's
desperately need all over.
Thank you. It's important to note that while it is a self-assessment, we do need to be able to substantiate the self-assessment at any time. I do not know that the state would ever come in and ask us, but we want to make sure that we always have our T's crosses and our I's dotted.
Are these scores public for the state? You can look up other districts? Is
Yes.
that possible? Be interesting to see who's honest and who's not.
Every district by law is mandated to have it on the front page of their website.
I have not done that research because I worry more about
Oradell Pub.
us, yes.
Any other questions? Thank you, Ms. Hawley.
Thank you.
Ms. Bozios?
For the second part of my report today, I'd like to share the Culture and Climate Family Survey results from last year. As we know, last year the board set a goal to do a culture and climate survey of all stakeholders. You have all received the full set of data for all 3 sets of stakeholders, but we decided we would share the family part publicly this evening. So I want to start out by looking at the participation data. So we had 326 completed results. Now, we had 813 students last year. We had 608 families. I'm going to make the assumption that most people did 1 per family, but in some cases we may have had 2 results from the same family. In fact, we did not lock the survey, so a parent could have done it 5 times themselves if they wanted to, but we wanted to make sure that if you were in a house with 2 parents and you both wanted to do the survey, you could from the same IP address, so we left it open. So our participation rate, if we consider the 608 families and 326, is 54%. I'm always curious about who does a survey. We know that when you're way out of 6th grade and it's the spring, you might be less likely to complete a survey. However, again, we have a slightly altered data set, because we did not have families complete 1 for each child. So we may have somebody who had a 1st grader and a 6th grader, and they are counting in both of those data sets there. So when I went to look at the data, what I always look for is what stands out. What stands out positively, what stands out as an area to grow. And so I started by saying, well, what am I going to use as that litmus? And I typically like 80%, because 80% says you're really doing great. The reason I lowered it to 66.6% is our scale was a 5-point scale. It was strongly agree, neither agree nor disagree, and strongly disagree. We had a lot of people choose neither agree nor disagree throughout the survey. That made the data really hard to dig into. So when we look at that first one under safety and building and grounds, adults at this school create a safe environment for all. 71.5% strongly agree, agree. 7.7% strongly disagree or disagree. That still leaves us over 20% that said neither agree nor disagree. And that makes the data a little hard. So that's why I lowered that level to 66.6%, because so many people had chosen the neither agree nor disagree. The school building is adequately cleaned and maintained. 66.9% strongly agree, agree. 19.6% strongly disagree, disagree. And you can continue to go down there. As someone who values relationships a lot, I was really happy with there is an adult at school my child is comfortable going to if they need help. They often say that is one of the most important indicators for, frankly, violence prevention. Does every child feel included and that they have a person? So we see 76.4% strongly agree, agree, 4.6% strongly disagree or disagree. Again, we have a whole 20 percentage points that I almost wish I had said to parents, fill this out with your child and ask them that question, because I think it's something that they've probably never asked their child before. So you can continue to see down in adult students and relationships, the percentage rates. Parental involvement, my child's school shares updates information in effective ways. 67.5% strongly agree, agree. 16% strongly disagree or disagree. This is where, if you talk to somebody who is in statistics, they are going to tell you to use a 5-point scale. But this is when a 5-point scale is so frustrating, because I feel like you should have an opinion on this one. Everyone gets information from the school. So do you agree? Do you disagree? Jump it aside. I feel respected by my teacher and staff at the school. I respect my teacher and staff at the school. Homework is an important part of the learning process. 77.6% agree. My child has technology at home when they need to complete homework. That was a really important one for us, because we were learning last year that less and less families actually have computers at home, and we did have some students who were completing homework on their phones, and that's just not conducive to solid learning. So we have put some protocols together. We started last year, all 6th graders take their Chromebooks home, and we have said to teachers, if there is anyone in this school that does not have a device, and you can tell they're doing homework on a phone, let us know. We will make sure they take one home. Technology is an important part of the learning process. 76.7% strongly agree, agree. My child has the skills to use technology safely, 70.6%. I am satisfied with my child's school. That is probably one of our closest up there to 80, is at 78%. 8.3%, so if you put that middle group in there, we get up to 92%. So these are the areas that, as a school, as a district, as an administrative team, we want to continue to dig more into, because these were the ones that had less than 2/3 or less than 66.6% at strongly agree or agree. Adults working at the school treat all students fairly and apply school rules and expectations equally. That's a really big reason that we decided to make this year the Way of the Panther, to make sure that we were all employing the same rules and holding students accountable to the same rules. I have enough opportunities to talk with teachers about my child's progress or problems. See that at a 62% agree. Staff communicate with me about my child's progress in effective ways, and this actually came right on when what we also talked about at the board retreat, and that is why that is one of our district goals this year. The school assigns an appropriate amount of homework. This was a great question. This was one of the few questions parents actually wrote about in the open-ended, and half of them say there's too much, and half of them say there's not enough. And I think that is what happens with topics like homework and topics like technology. People have pretty strong opinions, and it also does depend on where your child is grade-wise. An appropriate amount of technology is used in the classroom. That's 60.7%, but I do understand on that specific question, parents doing neither agree nor disagree. To them, they're not in the classroom, so they may not know how much technology their child is using. Students treat each other well at school, and this is where you do start to see a lot of neither agree nor disagree, but I think they're not here and they weren't sure how to answer that question. My child's school provides adequate social and emotional learning opportunities. Again, this was a very split question. You had some people saying too much and some people saying not enough. Not enough mental health professionals, too much time in the classroom spent on SEL. So again, we have that, it's a big school with lots of opinions and lots of thoughts, and our job is to continue to find that line. And instruction is consistent across classrooms at each grade level. This has been something we have spoken about as a board, and something the administrative team and I continue to look at. It's something we're really looking at during our walkthroughs, and it's one of the reasons that Mrs. Hawley is meeting with every grade level every month to make sure that those consistencies are happening. There were certain questions that it's too hard to really look at from a strongly agree to a degree, so I did take out the tutoring questions. So this is specifically about, did your family use tutoring in language arts? And it's about 75% to 25%, 75% no to about 25% yes. I then thought for a question like this, it might be important to look at grade level. Is there a specific grade level? Are we seeing first graders have a lot of language arts tutoring and fifth graders have a lot of math tutoring? It actually didn't show that way. It seemed to be grade specific, third grade and fifth grade specifically. So if you look at where the green is on third and fifth, and we go to the next slide, and this is specifically about math now, percentage is almost exactly the same. 25% yes, 75% no. It didn't matter if it was language arts or mathematics. And again, third and fifth grade. And because the board was very interested in this, I made sure to pull this information out as well. Are we recommending tutoring? And you will notice that third and fifth had the highest yes percentages there. And is your tutor an OPS staff member? I also wanted to pull out this question about bullying because it's something we spoke about a lot during some of our HIB investigations last year. The definition of bullying, is it clear to families what bullying is? And I'm not sure it is. I'm not sure this question necessarily says my child's being bullied. Is it my child has conflict? Is there a difference? Does it matter? I'm not sure, but I wanted to pull these two out as well. With regards to what have we done with the data, first of all, this presentation will be posted on the website. There are 2 active links on the bottom of it. It will give the community full survey data, both overall survey data and survey data by grade level, because sometimes you want to drill down a little more. Maybe you want to look at your specific child's grade level and how parents were responding. The administration has reviewed the data. You as a board have seen the data. We will be sharing with the staff next week, but I did want to do the full board presentation first. Parents and staff have both had opportunities to continue to discuss a lot of the topics in the survey as a focus group with Coach Stroker. Coach is going to come in one more time in the fall to give additional set of parents who might not have been able to make the summer meetings a chance to say more, because the survey only says so much. And sometimes what comes out at the table is much more powerful and much more helpful for us to inform our next steps. And 2 of our district goals, I do see a very clear connection to the data that was presented here. The district goal regarding communication about student progress, that was one of the lower areas on the survey. And the district goal regarding protocols, including building cleaning and maintenance, even though building cleaning was 66.9% and over my threshold, it had about 20% no. So I think that that goal that we've set and the efforts that we put in this summer to improve in that area also address that. Our school focus on behavior routines and expectations gets at a lot of those consistency questions. Are people being held accountable for the same behaviors? And also the bullying conflict question. And we have spoken as a team, we will continue to do analysis of technology usage, homework, and consistency across the classrooms, because that's not a this year issue. It comes up every couple of years, and it's something we want to make sure we don't feel like with homework. Well, we did a homework survey a couple years ago, and we put some things in place, and so we're done. Well, we need to go back and do it again, I think. So do you have any questions for me?
Mr. Nutlin?
Yes, I have a few questions. Going back to the slide about, first, where did we get the questions from?
The Public Relations Committee put the survey together based on about 3 larger surveys that I brought them from samples from other districts.
Okay. Going back to the bullying, now that's an interesting one because I feel like that's a loaded situation because the state has a very defined definition of bullying, and most parents don't know the parameters of that and also don't understand that you can call me something horrific, as a distinguishing characteristic, and if I demonstrate that it doesn't bother me, it's not bullying, even though what you said was horrific. I'm, remarkably handsome, whatever. But if the parents don't understand the definition of bullying as in the eyes of the state, that number is off. So I just, I think the next time we ever do a survey, we have to make sure that we kind of remind ourselves, like, what's the definition of bullying?
I'd like to make a comment on that. I agree with you because I don't think what we have talked about in closed session and whatnot is you can bully someone, but it doesn't make it HIB. So there's a difference between bullying and HIB. So I think this question for the parents, actually, we weren't asking, is your child a victim of HIB? I think for us, we wanted to know, coming from PR, was your child a victim of meanness, aggression, not necessarily HIB? So I think this information for us is a better indicator than the state definition. You might disagree, but I think for us and our purposes, this is a better definition of what we want going on in the building.
And I think part of the reason for that is we know Mrs. Hawley does the training, and she goes over that legal definition. But here's the deal. That legal definition, you're going to sit in this room, and you're going to go, yes, I understand. And as soon as your child comes home upset about something, that legal definition just goes out the wall, out the door, right? I feel like my child has been wronged.
Mrs. Downey, you agree with that from PR? That's kind of what we were looking for, the meanness, the aggression in kids, more than HIB. Mr. Darian?
Yeah, one is just a comment. I want to chime in on some of your comments. This is page 3, if you include the title. This would be areas with greater than 2/3 of a response to strongly agree. So I'm going to frame this as, the results are, to me, it's like tyranny of the majority, right? Most people said favorably the following, right? Safety, buildings and grounds, adult-student relationships. These were all things that came across with high initial rankings. But when you look at the dissatisfaction side of the coin, a couple of things stand out. If people who strongly disagree, those numbers are 4, 6%, 5 or 6%, that's pretty much in line. There's a couple of 8%, but there's 3 statements that stand out in terms of 19, 16, and 14% strongly disagree. And to me, that was an area of concern where, the majority of the people said they were happy, but there's a significant amount of people who disagree compared to the other results here. And it's just good that we've already addressed these items with our goals. You had mentioned the cleaning of the building from a building and grounds perspective, and then also with parent involvement, there was a 16% strongly disagree regarding school shares, updates, and information, and you said we have a progress goal. So
We actually do not have a progress goal on
we
that.
don't.
You specifically set the progress goal on sharing about students' progress.
Okay, so then I would recommend that we look into this from that perspective, that's all. And then on the other slide, this is the following slide with areas with less than two-thirds of the response strongly agree. It's the same thing, except that, like you had mentioned, there's a lot of people who agree, but then there's a lot of people who disagree. And, you know, for most of the questions. So it's really hard to take action when you have a 50-50 split, and I completely understand that. So, and then the other ones where there is no split and there's no disagreeing, well, that means it's positive. So, you know, with technology, 60% strongly agree because it's a positive statement, and there's only 5 who disagree. So, you know, there's really no action involving there. So, I'm just referring to the methodology. I don't have any, you know, takeaways from that. And I just wanted to reemphasize maybe, I guess, then, regarding parent involvement, and the one where there was 16% strongly disagree, we take a look at that maybe a second time and try to figure out if there's something there.
Can you clarify what you just said to Mr. Darian about our goal?
Sure. Our goal that was our goal last year. My child's school shares updates and information in effective ways. And I think, I have to be honest, I'm blurring out a little bit on what the action steps we accomplished last year for that were. I know we made some deliberate efforts with the Google Calendar. And when we were sharing information with parents, so especially for working parents, making sure if it was the Halloween parade or a writing celebration, we were giving information out in enough ways. The goal this year was specifically about our teachers communicating students' academic progress. I think how we addressed it at the board retreat was, we spoke of a teacher who does an amazing job telling parents what their children are learning every week globally. This is what we're learning in the classroom this week, but wasn't necessarily alerting parents when their child started to struggle.
Thank you. Any other comments, Mr. Darian?
No.
Mr. Walsh?
Yeah, I think maybe, Catherine, because we've done this survey before, not the same survey, not the same questions, and we got a terrible turnout. The turnout, maybe 200 out of 800 children. This, once we gave them the avenue to not put their name down or not have a way of saying that they didn't know. This is their school for 6 or 7 years, and we don't do a survey. Thank God we don't do a survey every year. Maybe we should, but a different way.
I believe we
We
always
make-
do it anonymously, correct? Yeah,
Yes.
we always do it anonymously.
Well, maybe we shouldn't. Because if there's a problem in a school, we would probably overlook it or not pay as much attention to it if it was anonymous. One person out of 326 returns. We're not going to make the school any better if we don't look at the question and the answer, and then if it's negative, do something about it. That's the way I feel about it. I mean, I didn't take I was on the board, so I didn't take the survey. But I can see a lot of people, once you give them the avenue to make it anonymous, and you say maybe 2 parents both sent in the questionnaire. So that would even make it worse. That'd be 180 people as with 800 killed children. But I just think if we could find a way to, if there's something going on in the school that maybe parent wants to bring attention to, then we should have a way of letting them bring the attention to it and having the administration do something about it. Look into it.
Do you want to explain how a parent can bring forth a area of concern?
Sure. We talk to parents a lot about, where do you go for each level of concern, but we definitely could put something on our website to clarify for families that if the area of concern is in this area, it's about your child in the classroom, it starts with your child's classroom teacher. If it's not dealt with there, or if you feel like it's more of a school issue, it goes to the assistant principal for the grade level. It's part of why with having 2 new assistant principals this year, we spent so much time trying to get them into the community so people know them. At that point, I know Mrs. Hawley was on the phone with a parent today. Parents know that they can call Mrs. Hawley and air their concerns. And yes, I do get emails as well from parents when there is an area of concern.
The board has also received emails, so there are plenty of avenues for a parent to make a statement. Mr. Darian?
Do we have the ability of a parent to submit a comment or question or just have a complaint that's anonymous?
I have in the past received anonymous notes in my mailbox, yes.
Okay. Is it convenient, or does someone have to know that you have a mailbox that allows?
No, it came mailed to the school, to the superintendent, without a return address.
We've gotten them in the past. Depending on the, and depending on the topic, depends on how far it goes, if it's anonymous. Any other comments, Mrs. Walker?
This is just a question. I'm looking at the family survey of the tutoring surveys on both math and language arts. Are teachers in the school allowed to tutor their own students?
No, they may not tutor their own student. And the minute they find out they are going to have a student, so if they find out on step-up day they're going to have Johnny, they have to stop tutoring Johnny immediately. And they can't tutor in the building, it has to be off-site.
Right. I think, from my experience, this is low as far as the number of kids that are tutored. But if a parent, even if the child is doing well, and they want to have their child tutored just for the sake of challenge or to look better and do better, I don't see that should be a problem.
No, and that actually was a question. There was an additional question that stated, I use a tutor for daily homework, because there are dual working homes that have come to the school and said, I just don't have time to sit with my child after school, and I want to come home from work and I want homework done. And so they use a tutor specifically for that. And there was also a question about, I use a tutor to excel learning. There are lots of families that want to try to get their children into the academies in 9th grade, and they will start tutoring in 5th and 6th grade for that.
Mr. Del Greco?
Thank you.
About the homework, do we have a breakdown per grade on the amount of homework or what parents deem appropriate or inappropriate?
Yes.
What parents deem appropriate, or what our policy is? Because you're
guess-
asking what the parents think is appropriate, that's what you're looking for?
Yeah, I'm just curious to see, because again, as a parent of a graduating 6th grader right now, seeing retrospectively now in 7th grade, there might be some different opinions now, like, well, maybe there should have been more homework in 6th grade versus not.
Do you have that?
Maybe?
And if you don't have it now, it's okay. I was just curious.
Somebody has another question.
While you're looking for that, I just want to piggyback on Mrs. Walker's question. Our policy, I'm not sure, I know our staff cannot tutor their students. Can our staff tutor a sibling of one of their students? I don't think so, right?
It's not clarified in our policy.
We should look at that.
I do have another
Mr. Notlin?
question.
Can I just say one thing to
Yes.
that?
Yes.
That is actually one of the action steps for protocols.
Right.
In the district goals next year. this year was setting protocols for homework, because I don't think we've ever clearly articulated to parents what to expect. There are school districts that say 10 minutes per grade level. Then there are school districts that have to decide, is your independent reading part of that? But that tutoring part can go in there as well.
Yeah, we should look at that. Mr. Nutland?
How much time do the teachers have after the bell rings to offer extra help?
It depends if they're going to dismiss their class. If they're a sixth grade teacher, and sixth grade teachers don't have visual handoff, right? So they don't really have to walk down. They have a schedule of, it's my week to walk down and stand at the door. They have 25 minutes from 3 o'clock to 3:25.
From,
Dismissal at 3 o'clock.
Right.
The contractual workday for a teacher ends at 3:25.
3:25, okay. And that's Monday through Friday? But what time do the teachers who do not have a handoff? I mean, because I know handoff could take 10 minutes, so,
So no matter what, you're going to have to dismiss at 3 o'clock.
Right.
Whether you have a visual handoff or not, right? So there are teachers that have made arrangements. So-and-so dismisses 2 classes because I'm working with kids this day.
okay.
But the
They-
bell rings at 3 and teachers are contractual to 3:25.
Yeah, no, the
So-
3:25, I understand. I'm just thinking about how many students are not staying after school because they know that there's a handoff, or they know that their teacher is, going to be 10, 15 minutes, delayed because of the handoff, and it's only going to be a 10-minute, extra help session when,
I think the difference between an elementary school and a middle school is it's less student choice,
in elementary.
Yeah, teachers are calling home and saying, poor Johnny today, Johnny needs to stay after school on Wednesday for extra math help, versus I'm struggling today, I'm going to stay after school. There is that option, but there's less of that.
Okay. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Are you looking up the data? Oh, okay. Any other questions on the survey right now?
I have a comment.
Mr. Darian?
I'd like to thank the subcommittee for all their work. I know that it takes a lot to go through these survey questions and anticipate, what are the issues that we should be focusing on, how we should pose these questions, what type of response, multiple choice, top 10, all that kind of stuff. And, it's just hard to do and to execute. And, but it's important, so I'm glad we did it. So I just want to thank the subcommittee while we're sitting here.
It took a
in
long
silence.
time.
Yeah.
We started, it was 2 PR committees. It was our committee from last year that started with Mr. Griffin, and then it went into this year. It took a long time. And we also did teachers and students. You have to remember, that's a private survey.
So, Mr. Del Greco, I'm not sure if this is going to completely get at it for you, and here's why. Some of the people, it doesn't say the school assigns too much homework and the school assigns too little homework. So sometimes if it's a disagree, it's for completely different reasons. But in the copy that you received, the open-ended responses are there, and that kind of will show you a little bit as well. Anyone else? Okay, so I feel like I've been here for a while. In other OPS happenings, we had our second Parent Academy of the year last night and have a third one scheduled tomorrow. Last night, 4th grade parents met with Ms. Cummings, Mr. Werner, and 2 4th grade math teachers to learn more about Amplify, the activities they do in the classroom, and the online resources students can use at home. 5th grade parents will have the same opportunity tomorrow night. Later in the month, parents in grades K through 3 will have an opportunity to attend a Dibbles Parent Academy, and we also have 2 HIB Parent Academies in October. I think that brings our October Parent Academies to 5 We have also scheduled our STEAM Parent-Child Nights, and we'll get that out to parents very soon. We're going to try to do them more in the winter before baseball and lacrosse season start. This week is also designed as the Week of Respect in the state of New Jersey, and we did luckily coordinate our K-5 field day tomorrow to coincide, because what better way to reinforce a culture of respect than with some healthy competition. And finally, while Monday will be closed for students, staff will participate in professional development. One of the reasons we chose to make this day a professional day instead of conference day was to allow us to do some professional development across districts. Our child study team and related service providers will meet with their counterparts in River Edge and Riverdale to learn more about a new model of special education monitoring. Think of it as CUSAC for special ed, and we will be evaluated next year. Aides from all 3 districts will come to OPS to have additional training on strategies and techniques for dealing with difficult behaviors. Special area teachers from River Edge and Oradell will come to OPS to explore a variety of topics, from integrating media arts into the art curriculum to differentiating for different learning abilities in world language. The entire OPS staff will also attend an hour-long workshop presented by West Bergen on addressing neurodiversity in the classroom. So it is going to be a very full day. We also have Amplify here again to provide our teachers in grades 4 through 5 with professional development. As we said, we were very committed in terms of launching not just a new curriculum, but also a new resource in those grades. And that concludes my report.
I'm sorry, I may have missed it. You said 4th grade math presentation for the parents yesterday?
Yes.
How many parents came?
We have 96 4th graders. It's actually one of our smaller groups. We had 20 people sign up. We had 12 people show up.
Okay.
And I know tomorrow we have approximately 20 people signed up again.
For 5th grade?
For 5th grade.
Okay, thanks. Yes, we would like you to answer.
Okay, so the exceeding expectation on one of the areas of that HIB policy as set forth by the Board of Ed is a statement that says all school employees, contracted service providers, and volunteers have signed statements of assurance indicating their understanding of the policy and agreement to implement the policy. So I did not have parents and PTA volunteers or our contracted service providers, which would be our helper that comes to us from Ladberger and Calabria, to sign, I didn't have them sign statements of assurance. And again, that's like the exceeding expectation part. We can talk about if that's something that we want to do. Obviously, the teachers and staff, they sign in when they're at all of our meetings. So we have that, and we also have the parent signing in, but I didn't actually do like a legal statement of assurance.
Mr. Del Greco, you want to put that on for policy?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hawley, for looking that up. We appreciate it.
Of course.
And thank you, Ms. Bozios, for the presentation, because it was very well put together, and we appreciate it. Moving forward, let's see, so I don't skip minutes. We have minutes. Oh, I skipped Mr. Iapelli, sorry.
Just an update on the exhaust fans and the roof projects. Exhaust fans are set to be balanced and tested on the day of the professional development on the 14th. We are looking at a final electrical inspection for the exhaust fans on the 16th. Right now, there is developing a punch list for the roof projects. There's still some of the metal trim that needs to be installed and the reflective coating to put on it. That concludes my report.
Originally, we were told that the testing and balancing would take 2 to 3 days. We were supposed to do it over October 3rd and 4th. So now we have 1 day. What happens if they're not finished?
He believes that that was the contractor estimating on behalf of the sub. He said he spoke with the subcontractor. He believes we'll be able, because just like we had the electrical work done, we resolved the issue about the relays. That was turned to be on the contractor. So that was not a change order. That was eliminated. The only thing was the cut wire. So for instance, on those, he said there was going to be 2 to 3 days, and he did that in 1 day.
Okay, so you think we'll be done?
Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, moving forward to minutes, we have review of September 18th, and we have the approval of September 4th. I guess before someone makes a motion, if I have a change, Mrs. Norian, I should make it first, so the person who makes the motion does it with my change, or you do the motion first? Okay, so do we have a motion for approval of September 4th? September 4th?
I move that we approve the meeting minutes of the September 4th.
Second by Mrs. Walker. Any questions or comments? Okay, sorry, I just noticed this ahead of time. I may have missed it, but I think under policy, we took a vote and there is no, it doesn't show that a roll call or vote was taken.
For which meeting?
September 4th. So when I looked at it, I mean, I could be wrong because I look at my phone. But I think we're missing the vote. When I go to policy, I see policy, Mr. Del Greco spoke, and we have G1, but I don't see a vote, but I do have it on my set and for September 18th. Well, can't we just do it this way? Can't we
Yeah.
just do it here?
We could.
Let me see something. Hold on. Let me just make sure. What did I do with them? Oh, here they are. Huh? I'm going to, I just want to check it for a second, yeah. So. Oh, it does, okay. All right, so, do I need a motion then?
You didn't make the motion
I make a motion to change it? Okay.
to amend it.
You have to indicate what the change is, and the person who made the motion.
Can amend his whatever. So I would like to amend the September 4th minutes to show the policy motion, second, and roll call. All right. So you can make the motion to, just so you just make
Just
the
say-
motion to amend it.
Okay,
Okay, so you're amending it. Do I have a second?
I move that we amend it.
Do I have a second by Mrs. Walker? Any questions or comments? Call the question.
On the roll, Mr. Del Greco.
Yes.
Mrs. Downey.
Yes.
Mrs. Norian.
Yes.
Mr. Nutland.
Yes.
Mrs. Walker.
Yes.
Mr. Walsh.
Yes,
Mr. Darian.
Abstain.
Mrs. Nichols.
Yes. Moving to committee reports. Mr. Darian, would you make that motion?
Yes, we have, I'd like to make a motion for items A1 and A2. If I go back, I will read them.
I'll second it.
Okay, John, thank you. A1, approval of submission of the 23-24 HIB self-assessment score. As it relates to the presentation we received tonight. And A2 is the approval of district goals. We have a second.
Second by Mr. Walsh. Do we have any questions or comments? I have a question. On goal 2, we have the creation of an IRNS flowchart. And we have, on goal 3, the creation of an IRNS flowchart to guide teachers on parent communication. Is that two different flowcharts, or is that the same?
It's the same flow chart, but it meets both goals.
Okay,
Because
so-
one is about ensuring that parents are notified during the INRS process and before that process, which gets at the communication with parent goal, and the other one is the academic achievement goal.
So is it one flow chart?
It's one flow chart.
Okay, the reason I'm questioning is because we have two different anticipated completion dates for it.
I will change it to whichever one is first, because it's actually done,
Okay, because one's October, one's November.
October.
Okay, and then I guess I also have a question on the B&G cleaning maintenance schedule. I guess we thought it was going to be done before school start, then we talked about it in B&G. Is it going to be done by November? Will B&G get a copy of it by then?
Sure.
You think it will be done? Is it a staff issue?
I don't think it's a staff issue. We can have, if it gets revised after that, it gets revised after that, but a draft can definitely be completed.
Any other questions? Call the question?
On the roll, Mr. Del Greco.
Yes.
Mrs. Downey. Mrs. Norian.
Yes.
Mr. Nutlin.
Yes.
Mrs. Walker.
Yeah,
Mr. Walsh.
Yes.
Mr. Darian.
Yes.
Mrs. Nichols.
Yes, Buildings and Grounds, Mr. Darian.
Yes, in terms of committee report, we haven't met, so I have nothing to report tonight. On the agenda, we have item B1 for a lot of facility use, 10 items.
I'll second it. Or I'll third it.
Tie.
All right, I'm going to say second by Mrs. Norian. Any questions?
I had a question.
Mr. Darian?
It was already answered, but item number 5, the PTA, I guess there's pumpkin pie with principals, and I didn't know if the pumpkin pie had principals or they're having pumpkin pie with principals. But that was clarified, so I'm fine with it.
I would like to make actually a slight change. Mr. Iapelli, you and I had a conversation about the custodial charge, and I think we should change the junior women's club to TBD until we finalize that, right? Because it seems to be on our old rate. Just so they know that they're being charged. Any other questions? Call the question.
On the roll, Mr. Del Greco.
Yes.
Mrs. Downey. Mrs. Norian.
Yes.
Mr. Nutlin.
Yes.
Mrs. Walker.
yes,
Mr. Walsh.
Yes.
Mr. Darian.
Yes.
Mrs. Nichols.
Yes, curriculum, Mrs. Norian.
Yes, we have not had any meeting, but I would like to present C1, approval of field trips.
I'll second it.
Second by Mr. Walsh. Any questions? Since I'm on a roll tonight, I have a question. Do we have two chaperones on every side of the cabin?
We will. We just sent out an email. We need 2 more chaperones, 1 male, 1 female.
And it has been explained,
Yes.
not that part, thoroughly to the parents that alcohol is not allowed at Sharp?
I feel like that yes, Mrs. Hawley, there's actually written words of that now.
It's the rule. We can send them home. We can cut out Sharp in the middle of the night and send everyone home. Is that has it been?
Yes.
Okay, and we will definitely have 2 chaperones on each side?
Yes, actually, we were just talking that this is the first year we are not hounding people to go. We
Good.
literally only need 1 more dad and 1 more mom, and we're good, and that's amazing for this far ahead of time.
I'll be there.
Hallelujah.
I'll be there.
Yeah, I can
All right,
remember when
good.
I had to do an extra night there because they didn't
Yeah,
have
we are
enough.
usually begging.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Call the question.
On the roll, Mr. Del Greco.
Yes.
Mrs. Downey. Mrs. Norian.
Yes.
Mr. Nutlin.
Yes.
Mrs. Walker. Mr. Walsh.
Yes.
Mr. Darian.
Yes.
Mrs. Nichols.
Yes, Finance Technology, Mrs. Acosta is not here. Who is on? Oh, yes, Mr. Darian, you're on Finance. Well, let me give it to Mr. Del Greco.
Okay.
You've done enough.
Well, thank you. I'd like to introduce D1 through D5.
I'll second it.
Second by Mr. Walsh. Any questions? We have the July financials, which Mr. Iapelli emailed to us right after the board meeting last time.
Yes.
Call the question.
On the roll, Mr. Del Greco.
Yes.
Mrs. Downey. Mrs. Norian.
Yes.
Mr. Nutlin.
Yes.
Mrs. Walker. Mr. Walsh.
Yes.
Mr. Darian.
Yes.
Mrs. Nichols.
Yes, delegate report, Mr. Walsh?
I have nothing to report. There should be a meeting in October, but I haven't gotten any notice.
Mr. Iapelli, could you look into that?
Yes, well, the school workshop is coming in next week. So Mrs. Norian and Mr. Walsh and Mrs. Bozius are attending. Those have been registered, paid, you're set.
Can you just look into
And I
future
will double
delegate
check
meetings?
the
Thank you.
delegate meetings.
Mrs. Walker, personnel.
Yes, thank you. I'd like to present F1.
I'll second it.
Second by Mr. Walsh. Do we have any questions?
I have
Mrs.
a
Walker?
question. On 5A, what's the training the teachers get for going to Sharp?
We've had a lot of turnover in our fifth grade team, and because we're going to send people out on a hike, if you haven't gone, we want you to go on a Saturday and walk the trails, understand what students are going to do on this trail. We do try to make this connected to learning. So Ms. Powers and Ms. Melenda are experts at Sharp. So they take new people through and talk about, and when you get to this tree, you're going to remind everybody about what they've learned in science about trees. Because we want to make sure you've had a consistent experience at Sharp, whether you have the person that's gone 15 times or whether you have the person that it's their first time leading. So it gives them an understanding of what that 3-day, 2-night experience will be like. And it ensures that kids are going to be safe and they're going to have a great experience.
Okay, and they're being paid then,
Yes, almost like a workshop.
and they go up there?
Yes, they will go to Fishkill for those 6 hours.
Also, I think last year was the first year we sent staff up to be trained because we had such a huge turnover. In the past, we never sent people to be trained because we were able to have continuation of our staff. So I question this, why are we doing it again? So I do think the expectation is, though, we are not going to be going forward every year and sending up a group for training. If we have a core group, I'm assuming they can train there. I believe that's the expectation. Mr. Del Greco?
To that point, could they, as they go through this time, photograph, document, write down, so, hey, this tree marked here, maybe pin it or something, like this is what you're going to be talking about and teaching, and kind of reduce the trips in the future?
Absolutely, and we did not anticipate doing this. We had parting of the ways with some of our fifth grade teachers, and that's why we have new people. You have to remember that for people in our world, sometimes they've never been to the woods. And to go up there, like, we're not contained in an area this big. Like, when we play Predator and Prey, we play Predator and Prey in the woods. So we just want to make sure everybody feels comfortable with it.
I have a quick question. Is the number of people that go, isn't there always a couple of teachers or experts that are on that trail that could take over for this year, so that, I'm not begrudging them going, but I'm just saying.
We really have lost staff to retirement. I mean, you'll notice we're taking a retired teacher, and we normally take another retired teacher who unfortunately is unable to go this year. So it's really just building up that cadre again, because yes, what we would like to have is 5 people who are super experienced with each group. We're just not there right now because of some teachers who have resigned over the past couple of years.
So you'll re-examine it every year
Yes.
to make sure.
Yeah. And you'll notice we're sending 2 admin, because if our admin are consistent parts of our community, and having them trained will also help.
I got a call from the principal. My son was at Sharp. They were lost in the woods. They were lost. He said, don't worry. It's okay, but they're lost. They'll all be fine. You can't go that far at Sharp. Don't worry. It's fine. It's all good. A long time ago. Any other questions? Call the question.
On the roll, Mr. Del Greco.
Yes.
Mrs. Downey.
Yes.
Mrs. Norian.
Yes.
Mr. Nutlin.
Yes.
Mrs. Walker.
Yes.
Mr. Walsh.
Yes.
Mr. Darian.
Yes.
Mrs. Nichols?
Yes. Mr. Del Greco, policy.
Nothing to report in the past, but I will be seeking out dates in the future for a policy meeting based off of tonight.
Mrs. Downey, public relations.
I don't have anything to report.
I know we're working on a newsletter, right? I guess you'll keep us posted on that, and then if we have to meet, we'll meet. Is that good? Okay. Open to the public.
There we go. Amory Spiegel, 837 Ellis Place. I think you have a lot of good first steps to improve upon the deficits you found in your climate survey. I would encourage you to have your school counselor HIB trained if she is not already. I would also love an update about the hiring of the part-time counselor. I would encourage you to have students complete the climate survey in grades 3 through 6. We used to do this in school after we reviewed the questions with the students. Obviously, this would be a different survey and differently worded questions. And lastly, if your goal is to increase communication about academics, you should consider an optional conference in the spring. Many districts in Bergen County have a fall and a spring conference offered. I know your calendar is already set, but it could be an option in the further years. Some districts send a form in the spring if the teacher thinks that a conference is warranted, and then the parent decides if he or she wants a conference as well. Thank
Can I
you.
ask you just to repeat something you said? What did you say about third through the students?
3rd through 6, we used to do a climate survey for the students as well,
We sent-
separate.
We did one.
Oh, good.
We did
And-
one for what grades?
Actually did grades 3 through 6. I administered it myself
Oh, good.
because I wanted consistent implementation. I didn't want them to feel like they were going to hurt their teachers' feelings. So I
So when you
filled
said-
this room.
So with families, those included the students as well?
No, these
No.
are just families. So we
Okay.
did 3 surveys last year,
Okay.
a staff survey, a student survey, and a family survey.
And so when is going to be the report for the student?
That is private. It's
Okay.
student info, so that's not coming up. And I
Okay.
do want, I want Ms. Bozios, if you could comment on the guidance counselor.
We
HIB training.
deliberately don't have our counselors trained in HIB because it goes against counseling.
Okay.
If you want that person to then be able to intervene, and we know that with any time we have an HIB, we often have a remediation step of counseling. We want that counselor to be
separate.
our new counselor additionally is starting Monday.
Great.
So we're very excited about that.
As a school counselor, I think that's a fabulous approach because you don't want the counselor then tied in with the discipline or the potential discipline with the child. So I actually I was
Makes sense.
a school HIB specialist. It was a nightmare. So I'm glad that that's the movement.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
I'm Jen Abtablo. I have 2 students.
If you can write your name and
Oh,
address
sure,
in the book
absolutely.
first, and then.
Okay, so I have 2 students at OPS. First, I want to say you guys did an amazing job at the Family Fun Day. The float was awesome, and the panther and the truck, so we appreciate that. So I wanted to discuss an area of concern that some parents have regarding the length of time allocated for school lunch. It seems many students are not able to finish their meals given the time constraints. The American Academy of Pediatrics and the U.S. Center for Disease and Prevention recommend children have at least 20 minutes to eat, and that doesn't include walking to the cafeteria or washing your hands. It's really just the time that they have to sit down. So actual seated time. Although not mandated federally, many experts in the field agree that inadequate mealtime does have negative consequence. So benefits of a suitable lunchtime include being able to complete the meal, which in turn provides ample nutrition for our students. Harvard nutrition professor has demonstrated in her research, Julia Chan, clear correlation between adequate lunchtime and healthy eating habits. So kids who have more time to eat are more likely to choose healthier foods and complete their entrees, resulting in children who learn better and have less disciplinary action intervention. Robert Murray, who is a spokesperson for the American Academy of Pediatrics, states, "It's really important for these kids to eat their whole meal. So kids who are rushed to eat may in turn develop bad lifelong habits surrounding food and mealtime. And it's vital for us to build these healthy eating habits, particularly in today's cultural climate. Lunchtime is also about learning and sharing an experience, and socialization is obviously vital at this age. There is also quite a bit of research surrounding recess and the negative downstream effects from scheduling it post-lunch. So the Journal of Child Nutrition and Management indicates that recess before lunch is probably best practice. A study focusing on this matter indicated recess prior to eating improved food consumption, decreased food waste, and improved behavior at lunchtime in an afternoon class. There was a marked decrease as well in recess-related injuries, particularly, belly aches and headaches that warranted trips to the nurse's office. In addition, anecdotal evidence suggested children feel less rushed to eat with recess first because they're not racing to get outside. They've also been given the opportunity to engage with each other during recess, so they're more food-focused when it's time to sit down for lunch. So I understand, obviously, you can't extend the day, but if it would be possible to accumulate an extra 7 to 10 minutes somewhere and create a lunch period that's maybe 27 to 30 minutes, I think the children could benefit. And lastly, I just wanted to touch upon quickly the hand washing at OPS. So it seems we're heavily reliant on the use of hand sanitizers rather than just regular soap and water. And while I can appreciate an already limited schedule, sanitizer use may seem appealing, there are risks with constant exposure at this young age. So children's skin is obviously more sensitive, putting them at a higher risk of skin irritation, skin breakdown, and ultimately that results in a higher susceptibility for viral and bacterial infection. Furthermore, the two main ingredients found in sanitizers, isopropyl alcohol and ethanol, really have no true long-term outcome data for continued daily exposure, particularly at this young age. Both chemicals can also be dangerous if accidentally ingested, although we hope that's not obviously happening. And post-pandemic, a lot of sanitizers increased their chemical percentage to make sure they were killing the coronavirus. So the CDC continues to recommend hand washing with soap and water is one of the best ways to stay healthy, and use of sanitizer rubs really only when soap and water is not available. So that being said, I think that a number of us would really love to see washing stations, maybe even commercial washing stations in the cafeteria that could potentially accommodate sort of a large number of students at each station. And I know that there are a number of parents who would be willing to sort of, spearhead a fundraiser or whatever it may be if it's a matter of raising funds to get these. They're sort of like these long carafes that, so just so children have access to hand washing, true hand washing prior to eating lunch. So thank you for your time and your dedication to our kids, and I appreciate that we're all aligned. So thank you.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Do you know of any schools in the area that have something like that?
No, I don't. So
Okay.
basically, it just seems to be access to the bathroom, which would be fine if the lunch period was a little bit longer. So if you have 25 kids in a class and they're all going to use the one restroom prior to lunch, you're going to get down there with 6 minutes left. But I've seen these commercial, and I've done some research on the sites. They have one with foot pedals, they have one that you don't even have to put on, and they have like 6 long. So you could essentially go through a number of children, 20-second hand washing. It would have to be hooked up, but.
I also just want to make a comment. There have been board members that have mentioned to me that there is a concern regarding lunch, and I have seen some of the comments. So board members have mentioned it to me. So we are going to be discussing it in committee at some point, but you have to realize it's a contractual issue also.
Oh, sure, yeah. So you couldn't extend the day. We wouldn't expect teachers to stay for lunch, but if you could shave a minute here and there just to.
Okay, yeah. So there's a lot of issues with it. It's contractual. There's a state law as to how many minutes of instruction you must give.
Sure.
So people had heard that there was a concern. So I don't know if it goes to curriculum or if it goes to personnel, but we're going to
Okay.
discuss it. But there's.
I'm sure it's tricky, but
Yeah.
I think, if we can shave somewhere even just to gain 4 or 5 minutes, just allows kids to sit and have the 20 minutes that really is the recommendation, right? It's not federally mandated, but it's recommended.
We appreciate you coming.
Thank you so much.
One more, it'll be 100% participation. Okay. All right, any old or new business? Mr. Del Greco?
Just want to make a comment. Just thank you to Ms. Bozius and everybody who, I guess, decorated the truck, attended, the staff who attended the Hesley Parade, and just showing that overall pride for the school. And the district showed well. They used this room here for photographs. They used the basketball court. So a lot of our facilities were used for that day. But the highlight was the truck and the float, and people seemed to like the float a lot.
It was
So
the best one.
Thank you for the time. Yes.
Mrs. Walker?
And to piggyback on that, I think all you said was true, but I do think that Ms. Bozio should have been more in the beginning part of the presentation rather than the end, and also that beautiful wood burning piece that, who's this made?
Mrs. Cataldo.
Yes, should have been shown more. It was like at the end, and that's when Ms. Bozio was called up, was kind of rushed through because everyone was tired after almost an hour of county officials. So I think you did a great job there, and it was a special day. It really was.
Mr. Darian?
Yeah, I'd like to thank the parent community who came out tonight. We here on the board are volunteers, and we spend countless hours. We could be doing many other things here at the school because we like to advocate for the kids, for the community, and it's just something that we're aligned to. And to see that you are now, also coming out and spending your time to share your thoughts to help improve what we're doing here, it's appreciated. It's not by any means a confrontational situation when parents come up and they have something to say. So I just know personally when there's no one here, I feel like, we're just doing all this and nobody cares. So when people do show up, when you show up, it makes us feel, it makes me feel good. So thanks for coming.
Any other old or new business?
I'll second that motion.
Any need to go into a closed session?
Nope. So I move to adjourn.
Second by Mr. Nutland.
I'll third it.
Second by Mr. Nutland.
Got one.
All in favor?
Aye.